Today, I'm talking about Nick and Norah's Infinite Playlist. The book was written by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan in 2006 and adapted for the big screen in 2008. It's about two teens who bond over good music and bad relationships while having a crazy night in New York City. Was the movie true to the book? Were there major changes? Keep watching and I'll tell you everything. Hey there, I'm Jessica, and this is Bookshelf to Big Screen. If you're new to the channel, I take a look at books that have been adapted to the big or small screen and compare the differences between the two. So if you're the kind of person who loves to know what changes were made in the movie, or if the book really was better, be sure to subscribe. Real quick, if you want to avoid any spoilers, watch for this. I'll have it up during any revealing parts, and in the event you want to wait and read or watch for yourself, you can just skip forward until it's gone. The story follows two high school seniors, Nick, who's in a punk band and pining over the girl who just dumped him, and Norah, a Jewish girl who's valedictorian at her Catholic private school and making big life decisions based on her bad love life. They meet by chance, but have more in common than they first realize. The book tells the story from both Nick and Norah's perspectives, alternating by each chapter. The movie has the same basic storyline, but changes a ton of details. So let's get into it. The movie starts off by introducing us to all the main characters. We see Nick sulking alone in his house, leaving sad voicemails for Tris, the girl who apparently dumped him on his birthday. Norah and Caroline are at school and they're sort of friends with Tris. She mocks the latest mix that Nick gave her before throwing it away. Norah picks it out of the trash because even though she doesn't know Nick, she likes him based on his taste in music alone. Tom and Dev convince Nick to get dressed so they can go play their gig, and the radio announces that the band Where's Fluffy will be playing a surprise show, which finally convinces Nick. Norah and Caroline make plans to try to find the show as well, and Tris says she's going too. There's some obvious tension between Tris and Norah. At Nick's show, he sees Tris with someone else. The crowd boos him while he fumbles with some toy drum machine, and Caroline teases Norah for checking out Nick, but Norah says she thinks he's gay. Nick is still fantasizing about Tris, and Tris takes the opportunity to talk some shit to Norah. Trying to save face, Norah says she's there with her boyfriend and randomly picks Nick out to pretend to be her boyfriend and kisses him. Tris is visibly upset. Norah realizes he's Tris's ex and freaks out. Caroline is drunk though, so Norah has to get her home and Nick decides to help her. The book starts right off with Nick already playing in the club. They have no drummer or weird drum machine. It's later explained that the lead singer hooked up with the drummer and then kind of broke his heart or something. Nick is still seriously pining over Trish, and we know she dumped him 3 weeks prior. While he's playing, Norah and the member of the next band are discussing whether he may or may not be gay, and she's the one who thinks that he's not. Nick sees Tris there with another guy and he's crushed. But he's the one who turns to Norah and asks her to be his pretend girlfriend. Norah sees Tris and kisses Nick in an attempt to avoid talking to her. The confrontation with Tris and the decision to get Caroline home is pretty much the same. In the movie, Tris tries to get Nick to give her a ride, but Norah shuts her down. Nick's car won't start, but his bandmates show up to give him a jump. While one helps with the car, the other tries to jazz Norah up for Nick by giving her a bra because they've decided they want to help her get Nick over Tris. He even offers to take Caroline home so that Norah and Nick can go find the Fluffy show. In the book, the only difference is that they don't try to change Norah's appearance by giving her a bra because that's gross. Instead, they give her $50 to take Nick out, which is much more practical and way less skeezy. The major difference here is that this is when we first encounter Norah's ex, Tal. He's real douchey, and for a second it looks like Norah might actually go with him, but she decides to stay with Nick. The car finally starts, and they take off. In the movie, some random people jump into Nick's car, assuming he's a cab, and they drive them to their destination. They make small talk along the way, and Norah says she got into Brown but has a job lined up and she hasn't decided what to do. Nick says he's going to Berklee School of Music and that he'd only be an hour away if she went to Brown. Norah goes into the club where they stop to use the bathroom and finds a clue to the Fluffy show. Nick and Norah are bonding over their love of Where's Fluffy, but Nick kills the mood by talking about Tris. Norah decides she's not having it and tells him to drop her off. They say some mean things to each other, and Norah throat punches him and leaves. Meanwhile, Caroline wakes up and runs out of the van when they make a stop. The guys call Nick to let him know, so Nick tells Norah and they meet up with the others to go look for Caroline. Caroline is at the Port Authority, but doesn't have enough money to buy a ticket. There's some humorous and gross moments with Caroline. The others come very close to finding her, but decide that she must have made her way to the Where's Fluffy show and make their way there. Basically, none of this happens in the book. Norah and Nick do make small talk while driving in the car, but they don't really discuss their college plans. We know from Norah's inner monologue that she declined her Brown admittance in order to go to South Africa with Tal, but he came back, so now she doesn't know what she's going to do. Later, Tris tells Norah that one of the reasons she broke up with Nick was because he was trying to make his college plans based on where she'd be going, and since she already knew that she wasn't that into him, she didn't want him to do that. Tom and his boyfriend, who are driving Caroline home, only momentarily get lost, but a cab driver helps them, and they get Caroline to Norah's house without any real issues. In the movie, when they get to the club, Norah goes to the front of the line and gets them all in. When Nick asks her why they let her in, she says it's because they know her dad, but doesn't tell him who that is. Inside, they have a moment where they start dancing weirdly, but Tal pulls Norah away and kisses her. Norah really doesn't stop him, so the others leave when they realize Fluffy is not playing there. Norah goes after Nick, who offers her his jacket. Tris sees that they're leaving and follows them, hoping to get to the actual Fluffy show. In the book, after they leave the place where Nick played, Nick takes Norah to a burlesque club. The bouncer here knows her, and this is when Nick starts to wonder about who she is. At the club, they slow dance, and then he gives her his jacket while they're inside. Norah has a momentary freak out over how well things are going and rushes off to the bathroom. This is when she sees the note about the Where's Fluffy show, but it's not some elaborate hunt. Fluffy is going to be playing right there at the club that they're actually in. In the movie, Nick and Norah are now bickering as they continue their search for Caroline. When Norah stops to check a convenience store that Caroline is known to frequent, Tris follows her in. She rattles Norah's confidence by bringing up a rumor that Norah's never had an orgasm. Outside, Tom gives Nick love advice. Caroline calls Tris and tells Norah that she's found Jesus. In the book, at the burlesque club, Where's Fluffy starts playing. Tris is there, and Norah decides to take Nick into a closet in the back. He stops her before things get too far because he thinks that she's trying to prove something, which she is. She's embarrassed and leaves the closet. On her way out, she sees Tris crowd surfing, pulls her down, and leads her outside. She asks Tris why. Essentially, why did she mess up Nick? There's not major animosity between these girls. In Norah's inner monologue, she remembers a time when she had a pregnancy scare, and it was actually Tris who went with her to get a pregnancy test and give her the moral support that she needed. They do chat in the Korean grocery store across the street, but Tris is telling Norah why she ended it with Nick, and Norah is telling Tris that she needs to tell Nick so that he can actually move on. When Norah goes back outside, she sees Nick, makes the sign of the cross on him, and tells him, "You are absolved," and leaves in a cab with his jacket. Dev is the one who gives Nick the solid love advice. I don't really understand this change in the movie. It seems like they've swapped the characters of Dev and Tom, but it doesn't really serve any purpose, so I'm not sure why. In the movie, Nora and the crew go to find the church where Caroline is, and we're treated to a weird little Andy Samberg cameo. But they figure out that Caroline is actually at an all-male holiday review and finally catch up with her. Tris heads off to find Nick's car and ditches her new guy to wait for Nick. Nick decides to go deal with Tris, leaving Nora, who's so bummed that she decides to call Tal. She goes to meet Tal, leaving Dev and Tom to take Caroline home again. Tal says he has a present for her, which excites Nora for a minute until he gives her his band's CD and asks her to get it to her dad to listen to. On top of that, he acts like a serious asshole when given the bar tab, expecting Nora to take care of it. She tells the waitress to charge him more and leaves. The drive with Tris is weird. She's all over Nick, who isn't really into it, and then she gets out of the car to dance for him. Nick starts to realize that he's really into Nora and ends up leaving Tris there. In the book, none of this happens. I think the all-male holiday review is supposed to account for the time spent at the burlesque club, but I don't really like it better than what actually happened in the book. When Nora gets into the cab and leaves Nick, she heads back to the club where Tal was, but when she sees him outside, she decides against it and heads to a 24-hour restaurant instead. In the movie, Nora is eating alone at the restaurant. Nick calls her because she has his phone inside his jacket. He says he blew it when he got out of the van and asks where she is so he can meet her. She confesses that before kissing him, the only other person she'd kissed was Tal. She takes him to Electric Lady Studios, finally admitting that her dad owns the studio. Here, they finally have their romantic moment. Nora finally has her first orgasm and records it too, for some reason. Meanwhile, the guys are taking Caroline home, but the radio DJ gives a clue to the Where's Fluffy show, and they change course and head for the show. Nora gets a message about it, and they race to the show also. Tal and Tris are both there, and they try to start some drama. But the band is going to play, and Nick and Norah decide to leave together, ignoring everyone else. And that's how the movie ends, with them kissing while riding down the escalator into Penn Station. In the book, after Nora leaves in the cab, Tris comes out and talks to Nick. She definitively tells him that it's over and that he should go after Nora. Then he gets his profound love advice from Dev, calls Nora, and meets her at the restaurant. But Tris shows up and drags Nora into the bathroom where she asks her for cab money to get home. Also, she gives Nora kissing advice, actually showing her how to kiss by kissing her. Nora ends up giving her the $50 that Dev and Tom gave her, and Tris leaves. Nick and Norah walk to Times Square, and Nora's dad calls to let her know that Caroline made it home safe and that her mom is making scrambled eggs for Tom and his boyfriend. She tells her dad that she blew it by declining Brown, but he says he switched her decline letter with an acceptance letter and a deposit check, so she's all good. It starts raining, and Nick and Norah head into a nearby hotel. They pick a random floor and head to the room with the ice machine. It starts to get a little hot and heavy, but they're interrupted by an elderly couple trying to get ice. They make their way back to his car, but it won't start again. They decide to take a train to the Port Authority and get a ride from there. Nick's Metro card runs out after he uses it, and Norah has to decide whether to jump the turnstile and go with Nick or leave him there and go call her dad's car service. The book ends with Norah deciding to go with Nick. So obviously there were some major changes here. The movie did keep some of the original dialogue between Nick and Norah. It was just kind of peppered throughout. The book is really more of a Nick and Norah one-on-one, and my guess is that the changes to the movie were made to have more characters and more action throughout. I kind of imagine a more direct adaptation would have looked more like a teenage punk before sunrise. Without having read the book, I liked the movie. It kind of reminds me a little of Adventures in Babysitting, like an everything goes wrong all night adventure, where they barely make it in the end. But after reading the book and seeing how much changed, kind of ruins it for me. The book is a bit juvenile in terms of dialogue, but I kind of appreciate that. I hate it when you're reading about teenagers and they have these incredible vocabularies and really profound thoughts. I'm like, come on, really? Overall, I liked the book. What I liked was that it was a quick, easy read and it was a bit nostalgic for me. Not that I really related to what these kids were going through, but in a sense that it was fun to remember going to shows and that whole scene. It was a good, light book to start the year for me. There you have it. That's my recap on Nick and Norah's Infinite Playlist by Rachel Cohn and David Levithan, and the 2015 movie adaptation. Did you prefer the book or the movie? Let me know in the comments. I've included links to both the book and movie in the description below so that you can check them out too. If you enjoyed this review, please click like and be sure to click subscribe to see my next video. Thanks for watching.